Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Would like to call to order the July 9th meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport
Push that
Commission.
install.
Present, we have
And then one touch.
myself,
Thank you.
Commissioner Topham, Commissioner Buscarin, Commissioner Marks, Andrea Flanzer will not be with us tonight. And as such, I would ask for everyone to have consent to revise the agenda to hold off election of officers. Andrea was reappointed by the select board since our last meeting, so if everyone's amenable to that, we'll do the officers at the next meeting. The meeting is being conducted both by Zoom and here in person. Given that all of our commissioners are here in person, we will not have to take all of the votes by roll call. Please be sure to speak whether you're online or here in a clear, concise manner for keeping the minutes and through the chair. We do have the policy for public participation attached to the agenda. Any public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. And the meeting's being both audio and video recorded. Are there any comments on the agenda other than what I noted for the holdover of election officers? We will consider that adopted by unanimous consent. We have the minutes from June 11th, draft minutes that were in your packet for review. Any comments or questions?
No.
Hearing none, we'll consider those accepted by unanimous consent. We have to ratify the warrant from June 26th, 2024. And it's appreciate a motion for that application. So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Questions? Stop. How do you vote?
But I.
Karen. Aye. Marks. Aye. Chair votes aye. Do we have any public comment for items that are not otherwise on the agenda? Anybody online?
No worries.
Okay, thank you. And that'll move us on to item number 4, and I am for Mr. Cheney's comment hangar rent request. I'll turn that over to Vance Carver.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Cheney is requesting a hangar rent statement. He lays out his basis for that request. I discussed with staff, we agree with him. Very quickly, this is a legacy item in our common hangar rates. 20 years ago, when these rates were probably put in, turboprops and jets, just they were far bigger. We didn't have the very light jet market that we do now. I think it's fair that we honor his request and anyone else in the common hangar rents to hold their rent steady, and we can take, if they change aircraft types, and we can readdress this in the January, February timeframe for the formal rates and charges revision. That's usually when we hold those matters anyway. So that's staff recommendation, lays out a good case, and I do think it's right. But it is a approved rates and charges item, so I wouldn't want to make that change on my own without voting the commission.
So you just wanted to keep it the same? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, the plane's actually smaller anyway, so.
It's actually smaller. The weight difference is really insignificant.
Any questions?
What type of aircraft is it?
I think he has a serious job.
Yep, that's correct. There he is.
So I was just speaking in favor of your renting.
That's easy. Thank you all.
Is there any other questions? Would there be a motion to approve staff recommendation to hold the rent as it is?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Stop. How do you vote?
I.
Mr. Karen.
Aye.
Marks.
Aye.
Aye. Cheney,
Thank you all.
your requests.
Much appreciated.
Sure. Thank you.
Have a good night. Good timing.
That'll lead us to pending leases and contracts, set forth on exhibit 1, discovered.
Okay, we have 3 items on exhibit 1 for July. First is the lease agreement with United Airlines for $33,496. We did receive this earlier, so we are only billing them a 1-month late fee. I do not intend to assess an additional month. We also have a 3-year contract for the phone system and service, New Horizons Communication for $33,347.44. And we have as a handout. A non-monetary contract amendment with Robert B. Howard prepared through McFarland Johnson. This should extend the contract date by 30 days.
Any questions on, the lease or the contract or the contract amendment?
No.
Hearing none, was there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Tom, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Election of officers, we agreed to hold. I should have mentioned, I think, believe we should also hold the grant signing letter of authorization. It makes sense. Chair, things that we vote on that next. If everyone's amenable to that, we'll move on to pending matters and Mr. Carver for the South Apron Ramp Expansion Project update.
Okay, so the following project updates for you relative to the previous commission meeting. As of this morning, we were on day 126 of 150. The P403 base course paving is complete. The P401 surface course test strip passed. And the surface course paving is in progress now. So paving is now estimated to be completed by July 26th, which is one additional week later than I had notified you of last month. Mitigation work started on Monday to improve habitat in Area 1. That was part of this contract as well. Includes items such as invasive species control and terrain smoothing. The pavement markings and the saw and seal are now scheduled for August 8th. And that date or the date thereafter is when we are now on pace to accept the ramp, which is a week later than the August 2nd, which we had been shooting for. So on that note, as we do complete construction of the ramp, it is my intention to accommodate aircraft as we have this weekend that are static, towed in, place them on sections of the unfinished ramp as we're able and as we think is safe. I'll touch on that more in the later points. You know, this has been a great project. It's run on time. We're running a little bit late now, but every day that we can use a piece or a portion of that ramp, you know, is a safety and operation benefit for us. So we're working with the consultants on it. The hydro seeding is complete. The apron light poles, which were a long lead item, will be here in July for installation. And then regarding gate 30B, which is the gate at the low spot on Monahanset, more or less offset from Juliet, taxiway Juliet. We received some comments on that after initial rain. I did talk with the town about this and a couple interested citizens and a couple of points that I'll just relay here. As part of this project, the airport has implemented $10 million in stormwater improvements. Water from the airport does not leave the fence. It is collected and infiltrated on site at the airport. You know, unfortunately, there is a low spot on the road, and that spot will continue to flood with every rain event because the catch basins fail due to years of private road ownership and non-maintenance. You know, the airport contribution to this puddle, if any, was minimal. That the puddle still exists at this size, at the rain events we've had, I think is evidence of that. And we've invited the DPW director to inspect. I had a phone call earlier today with the town officials, and we are, you know, we're working together to identify a time and operational strategy to clean out the sand that's on the road, clean out the sand from the catch basin. Address that, dispose of the sand on site, on airports. And we're working to do that hopefully within the next couple of weeks. And I'll have more to report on this. So, before we move on,
Yeah, just, are we still gonna tie in? Are we gonna tie in or do something different?
we're going to evaluate it. So their engineers are going to run their catchment calcs, and we're going to run it against our capacity calcs. I think that's one option. Sure, moving on to the PFAS.
Yeah, does anyone have any comments before we move on the ramp, the progress, the, you know, initial use of it? The only thing I would add on, you know, on the puddle situation. Is that I do think that, I'm glad that we're at a point where, you know, the drainage for the ramp. Has been completed to a point where, you know, we're confident that there's not a contribution from the airport. But it's still a situation that I think the airport needs to really participate with the town and work together and cooperatively address that. I think it's a traffic, you know, safety hazard as well as, it's just something that, you know, it's time to address. I think we're there. So whatever, you know, the airport could do to assist the DPW, I think would be greatly appreciated.
But just one other comment, just, I noticed there was in the handouts, there was one complaint about early starts. Any update on that, or just because we're on this topic?
So we've looked into those complaints and we don't think that noise is from us. We put a moratorium on. Starting up equipment, backing up equipment. I think people are arriving to a job site at 6:45, like they do for any job site. On islands, but that's it. Continue to investigate complaints. Police have come when they've been called and they haven't found or cited the airport for anybody.
Cool.
Thank you.
For the PFAS update, I'd like to recognize Cameron Woods, environmental coordinator, to provide an update on the phase 2 addenda.
Hi, everyone. So I have a quick update. I am remote holding down the fort at the airport right now. So on June 26th, Weston Solutions, on behalf of the Airport Commission, submitted their phase 2 comprehensive site assessment report. We call that the phase 2 CSA. And they submitted the addendum to Mass DEP. The addendum was prepared following discussions between Weston, the airport, so that was Noah and myself, and Mass DEP during a site inspection that they conducted on May 2nd, which came following a standard notice of audit letter from Mass DEP. And that letter notified AC that Mass DEP was conducting what they call a level 3 comprehensive audit of the phase 2 CSA report, which we had submitted on March 8th of this year. The addendum outlines 3 primary changes to the phase 2 report. I'll go through them one by one. The first is an updated disposal site boundary along the western portion of the airport that now includes the leasehold property, which is airport gas. When we went out there, walked around, and Mass DEP and Weston agreed that the leasehold property should be included as part of the disposal site because the property is ultimately owned by the airport. Even though the PFAS releases or lack of releases, but in this case, we do believe that the washing/spray wax application may have some PFAS release. Even though these are not related to the airport operations, because the airport does own the property, we are including that in the disposal site boundary. The second change to the phase 2 CSA report is that we included an updated imminent hazard evaluation based on the most recent concentration recommended by Mass DEP, which has changed. They initially directed the airport to use 200 parts per trillion or ng per liter as criteria for the imminent hazard evaluation, but they've changed that and they now recommend a concentration of 90 parts per trillion be used. So Weston updated the drinking water results table to reflect this decrease in IH evaluation criteria. The third was an updated and more detailed accounting of the likely sources related to the various plumes. This really was more of an issue of semantics and labeling of the plumes for further clarity. There was one discrepancy in terms of our Mass DEP rep wanted north to be pointed up on the map. And so there were a few changes that were small like that, but that was it for the third change to the phase 2 report. If the commission wishes, the airport can ask Weston Solutions to come to the August meeting to present on the addendum and any other changes, but overall, they were relatively small changes, besides the updated disposal site boundary. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Thank you for that. I read through it, I found the work about the plume and the different signatures for the different kinds of PFAS to be quite interesting, a little bit more detailed than what we've seen before, and sort of trying to, I think, start to identify the some of the sources and the upgrading and stuff, but you know, so perhaps more to come on that. I don't know whether we need Weston at the next meeting. I'm sort of wondering when we might be receiving their next interim report. Would it make sense if we're right up against, you know, maybe we have them, but if they're gonna be doing yet another report in a month or two after that, do we condense them to, you know, a single presentation for this, and then whatever their next one would be? I honestly would defer to staff when they thought it would be most effective to have the consultant present. Everybody else agree?
Yeah, that's fine. When does, you know, when the next phase, like, that includes the remediation come? How far away is that?
I know it could be anywhere from 1 to 5 years, so I'd have to look it up.
Oh,
I don't know if Cameron knows
Oh, okay.
to be completed within the next 1 to 5 years.
Oh, all right.
Yep, so that will be phase 3, and we're currently working on the contract with Weston right now through MJ to begin work on phase 3, but once that is signed, that work will commence in roughly 1 or 2 months. We are considering right now creating an interim agreement so that they can begin that work under an early agreement, but that will not be ready for commission until next month.
My sense would be anytime in the next few months. You know, when you thought it would be the most efficient and effective. In other words, if they're gonna present something that they just did in June, but they've got something that's almost coming out in August, let's do it in September, or likewise, something along those lines.
Yeah, I don't think, for my purposes, I don't need them to be here at all. You know, quite frankly, the way they present and their material is so complete, they're not gonna add anything by being here. In my,
That's sort of what I was wondering, if there's a next milestone.
Yeah.
Then they could touch back on this and then do the next step.
but even so, you know, on Zoom, I understand what they're saying, their reporting is unbelievably detailed. And having them here, I don't know if there's any
Oh,
value.
I'm happy on Zoom.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was semantics. I didn't mean that I didn't think there's any need to them to
Yeah.
hold them down here.
Yeah, I
for
was-
that extent. But I just been present
Yeah.
even by Zoom.
I mean, they have done an unbelievably detailed job there.
All right, so it sounds like there's consensus on that. We'll just defer to staff for efficiency purposes and when we think we should, you know, a presentation would be most helpful. From Weston, if that makes sense to you.
It does. We have a project update meeting next week, Wednesday. And we'll get their feedback.
Thanks. Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you.
Back to you, Scarborough, for crew quarters.
Okay, for the crew quarters project, there's not much activity to report. Modular spec is with the manufacturer, be constructed and delivered over the next few months. Our next action will be to schedule and hold a stakeholder meeting to discuss the sewer rate. Likely with town administration, police departments, DPW, to see that we do. And for the terminal optimization project, before I recognize Priyanka Menon and Jonathan McCready from Pentagon McCready, that a very brief presentation and update for you. The one item I did want to discuss is the hazmat review for the terminal inventory. Only out of an abundance of public disclosure and right to know. We found asbestos containing materials on 2 doorway threshold locations. We'll find these materials when we go looking for them, so that's something that will be abated and removed. If and when work ever occurs on those. And then spray on fireproofing that you can see from the basement up against the steel girders and, the bottom of the cement floor, that we close floor on top of contains vermiculite from Libby, Montana, which is known in the industry as the Libby and amphibole or amphiboly. So this product can contain naturally occurring asbestos. It's not been tested, but it's considered that it could contain asbestos, so we're treating it as such. Any work that disturbs it would either encapsulate it or provide for qualified removal. We've already informed staff, we'll inform tenants at our next tenant meeting. And that's informing the commission now.
So with respect to that, so the work that we're gonna do in there, is the intention that all that has to be removed? Or is it just that we're just aware of it, so that, like you said, we take the necessary precautions to keep it encapsulated if it is disturbed?
So the project manager with a hazmat consultant will determine if it's encapsulated. Encapsulating can be a layer of high quality paint. Yeah, it's my understanding.
So again, the question is that the project scope isn't to remove it all, it's just only if it's encountered.
Only if it's become.
I was just thinking if that were the case, we may want to consider trying to find a better way to test it. See if it really has it at all.
Agreed.
But if it's just not really, that's just disturbing them.
When was this installed?
So I believe this was part of the terminal renovation, which was completed in 2008.
I'm surprised any asbestos got put on any project after 1980.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, my understanding is it's all over constructed buildings from that area. For not long. Okay, so with that, I believe Priyanka is making the presentation and Jonathan McCready is also present and turn it over to them.
Thank you, floor is yours.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Noah, for that introduction. We have Jonathan McCready from Fenwick McCready, and we also have Rich Laston from MJ out on this project. Let me start sharing my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Jonathan, if you are able to kick it off, let me know. If not, I can go ahead.
I think I can give a very quick overview. You can hear me all right?
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this is the first in a series of connections that we'll have with the commission over the next couple of months as we update you in our development of the program needs, the existing conditions, and some proposals for how to address the deficiencies of the terminal building, with the primary mission being addressing deficiencies in such a way that we are optimizing the existing space as opposed to adding new space. Priyanka, maybe you can jump right ahead to slide 3. The next one. So as you're aware, but just as a quick review, to answer the question as to why is the terminal struggling so much today, it's being built, as Noah just mentioned, in 2008, not too long ago. It's due to the shift in the airline industry. When it was originally designed and built, it was basically designed to accommodate a series of 9-seat aircraft running through the terminal on a regular basis, relatively consistency throughout the day. And that meant that the terminal itself didn't result in having to accommodate large numbers of people at one time. The people really just sort of flowed through. The industry has changed, and now we have aircraft that are seating closer to 90 or 100, or as the recent article on the Island paper mentioned, the new A220, where there's a larger number of people on a single flight. So fewer flights, which is good from a noise standpoint, but it does stress the terminal because we have more number of people using it at a single time during the day as opposed to spread out throughout the day. And that results in some constrained conditions in some specific areas. Next one. So our first step was really to build a Revit model, a laser scan of the existing building. Because although we have some basic ideas about how to address these constrained areas, it's important to understand exactly where structure is behind the walls. It's important to understand exactly where infrastructure is in terms of power and conduits and mechanical systems and ceiling heights, so that the ideas that we come up with that we think make sense, we can actually test. We've actually completed that step. We've also been developing through the industry standard modeling programs that we utilize what square footages are most appropriate based on the current and projected number of passengers per hour. And that we have in draft form. We won't be sharing that until it's final. That'll be at the next meeting, but we can talk in generalities about what we're seeing. And then we'll be able to move into final design once a conclusion is reached as to the preferred layout. And that is why our next meeting in August will be able to actually share layouts and talks about the benefits of different approaches to layout solutions. Okay.
Right. So for this next part, it just walks you through the process as Jonathan identified. So we started building out an existing conditions model. We have a detailed scan of the entire terminal right now. With this, we started defining different area restrictions, including code regulations, any area constraints, any compliance issues that we may face. With the recent renovation at the terminal, as Noah stated earlier, back in 2008, the existing terminal is found to meet code, which is a good thing. We don't have to face too many issues with that. Simultaneously, we've also started evaluating all of the existing systems, their spatial needs, to identify any areas that we can optimize. This includes any spaces that are above ceilings, any floor differences that we need to cater to as we go forward with this new project, any existing utilities that are underground, the structural framing, any mechanical systems, civil and airfield needs, and existing outdoor spaces that can improve or be made more better in use and efficiency. From the exterior spaces and systems approach, we now have an updated floor plan, which has each individual area as well as each individual uses that's the latest and greatest. From this, we started identifying both quantitative and qualitative approaches to understanding how we optimize and make this more efficient. So we identified all existing programs and put this in two broad buckets. One is everything that is post-security that you see in blue, and everything that is pre-security that you see in orange, and anything that is supporting or serving these spaces, you'll see it in yellow in our diagrams going forward. From a quantitative standpoint, some of these spaces that fall short of the near-term needs, as we identified, is the post-security hold room with the existing temporary seasonal hold room tent on the outside. The second is the check-in and ticketing space. The third is a TSA security queuing space. Those are the three main spaces that we've identified. The second that we've also heard about is just the post-security concessions, and there seems to be a demand for it, and right now it doesn't completely exist. So that's one of the things that we'll be baking into the system. And then lastly, the baggage claim seems to be just that bit smaller than what is necessary for the near-term goals. Some of the spaces that can be optimized further include some of the basement areas, storage spaces, and support spaces in the terminal right now. From a qualitative standpoint, our approach was from the point of view of a passenger. And you can see from this diagram, it completely identifies how overlaying both the circulation spaces and queuing spaces seems to be the stem point from which all the issues arise. So this results in a lot of traffic conflicts with departing passengers at the ticketing and security checkpoint queue, with arriving passengers walking across from the baggage claim and car rentals at the opposite corner near the restaurant. We then started looking at baggage movement, and some inefficiencies that we identified were at the ticketing counter and the baggage claim areas, which required ground support staff to manually carry bags across onto the baggage belts. The undersized baggage makeup area, the checkpoint baggage zone, also adds to some of these inefficiencies that you see in the plan south. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see my cursor, but it's towards the airfield. So from this, we've sort of identified 6 critical areas of improvement. One is improving capacity by maximizing and optimizing existing spaces to meet current airport needs. We've also started to look at evaluating future needs so that we future-proof this slightly and sort of identify efficiencies where we can make these two ends meet of what is current and what are the future needs. We're also looking at improving passenger experience by enclosing the hold room that's currently a seasonal hold room into an enclosed conditioned spaces, and also providing access to post-security concessions. We're also looking at identifying a coherent theme that fits the context of Nantucket. This could also be through strengthening anything that we've identified with the terminal in its current condition. We're also looking at improving passenger and community well-being through better wayfinding opportunities and adopting certain lead-specific matrix that fits our needs for this airport. improving any operational efficiencies for all users and tenants, including ground support staff, specifically at the front end queuing spaces, as well as the baggage screening spaces. And improving overall passenger safety, specifically again at the pickup and drop off area at the entrance to the terminal. We're looking at improving also efficiency of the terminal envelope and mechanical systems. We conducted a site visit recently from which we identified these certain hotspots where the envelope system sort of gave up. So those are the three critical things. From here, next steps going forward is one is developing just a layout alternative and rough order of magnitude costs. So this will be a couple of design options and we'll run that by you. It'll focus on optimizing spaces, experience and well-being, as we mentioned. From that, with the commission, we plan to have a charrette between now and the next commission meeting, which is, I think, scheduled for the second Tuesday in August, where we'll discuss through the layouts, define priorities, and tailor this specifically to the Nantucket Airport community. And then for the final commission meeting, we will have preferred alternatives and we'll nominate a preferred alternative. That's what we had for today as an update. If anyone has any questions, please let us know. And we can also be reached, either Rich, Jonathan, or I. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
would just add one item. There are a couple of things that our current investigations are revealing that are very positive that we weren't sure about. Number one is that the basement is code compliant for a number of different uses. So there's a lot of possibilities with regards to the basement space. So that was good news. The second is that the modeling for the functionality of the airport based on current industry-wide models is indicating that there is more support space identified in yellow on the previous slides. There really is more support space than is currently needed based on current operational profiles. So there's some good news that has come out of these initial studies that there is space within the building that we can optimize and repurpose to address some of these deficiencies. I just sort of wanted to add that, and we'll be able to get into details at the next meeting in August.
Thank you both. Commissioners, any feedback, questions? Thank you. Sounds like we will, we'll look forward to hearing from you at our next meeting.
That's good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
That moves us on to finance, and we have the capital approval process for the grant funded projects. Using Article 94 for continued environmental monitoring discovered.
Yes, so this process has concluded and the funds are authorized and available for expenditure. Come off of our list.
Good news. And then we have the fiscal 26 potential capital project requests.
So as discussed last meeting, I have this item on the agenda as a placeholder while we go through this year's capital approval process. So I can discuss with you any changes made or updates to our fiscal year 26 capital project list as it goes through that committee review and the lead up to ATM 2025. So I've been working with town finance to revise and submit several of our capital forms for clarity and completeness. And so these have changed a little bit since the last meeting. I was going to highlight the changes for you. I also have them highlighted in color on the So for the continued environmental permitting, this will come off the list as it's now been authorized via the Article 94 change that we just discussed. PFAS supplemental request has increased 3.7 million from 3.5 million. The ARP station repairs have increased to 5.4 million from 5 million. The south ramp noise barrier, we're reflecting our informed estimate of $5 million now. The tri-trader or septic receiving upgrade is now at 500,000 instead of 250,000. The FBO solar roof design, this is probably something we need to pull from this list. I just, given the town's deadlines and our bandwidth, I don't think we're going to be able to turn this around in short notice. For paint beads and marking removal, I spoke to the town. They really didn't want me to have a capital item that said cost TBD. So I used the high end of the range that I had in the narrative, which was 1 million. It was a $500,000 to $1 million. Perfectly reasonable request. And then the final three items which are outlined in gray, there are three changes, two additions and a sort of regrouping for vehicles and ground service equipment. We were previously carrying three separate capital requests for three different pieces of equipment. We're combining these into one single request and we're adding two pieces of additional equipment to this. There are a couple of reasons for that. I don't want to have to manage three requests if I can manage one. And one of the items that we're putting on is a Z-Track mower that we use for mowing the islands on the airfield. It only costs $20,000. That doesn't meet the threshold for capital item unless it goes on a multi-piece of equipment list. Then you can have a lesser item. So this will allow us to add it to the capital budget. The other addition that I have is the replacement of Airport 4, which Airport 4, our current is a 1999 F-250 utility body truck. So we will be replacing it with a new truck with a snow plow, prep package, and everything that we need. It comes out to nearly $100,000. The other item, and I actually the chair noticed this correction earlier. I'm showing $130,000 for combined cost of a passenger bus, a Z-Track mower, and Airport 4. That's going to be closer to $250,000 or $280,000. We need to update that individual cost.
Any questions on any of the capital items?
Well, the noise barrier has certainly grown, and that was $1 million operation when we were talking about it years ago. Now it's 5. And that's not, we're not getting any government money on that one, I don't think.
We're not planning on getting any government money. If anything becomes available, that we think of it available, we'll try to compete for it. But we do have to look at this and carry it as a
Sure.
airport public process.
So we're going to add to our debt. Some degree on that.
Potentially. I'm hoping, this is my personal hope, I'm hoping for another strong year to end fiscal year 2024, where we have funds available to pay down or pay off capital projects. I don't know that we will be able to pay off all of our projects that we want to take forward. We haven't taken on debt in 6 or 7 years.
It's
It's
pretty close to
maybe the
paying it
year
off.
that a project
Yeah.
does. My preference would be a project that is linked to a revenue source that can pay for itself.
And on that point, I mean, I think that when we revisit rates and charges and we have a capital project like that, it's directly associated with parking of those aircraft, then the rate could, there's a justifiable nexus to increase those rates to help us pay that debt.
Absolutely.
So I think that, we just keep that all accounting, and when, next January and February, when we start looking at adjusting those, and there might be some folks that aren't as happy with increases to that particular category, well, there's a reason why it's needed. So put the costs where they're generated, I think is the right approach. Do we currently have the GPO Recon Air unit? Are all of the ones we have right now just GPU and they don't do the Recon Air? Like we already have some?
Can I?
Yeah.
Or
please.
custom?
Yeah,
We all we have are GPUs.
that's what I thought. So this is a pretty big,
Yeah, but there's something that we've never had and we would have to
yeah,
learn how to use it. So
great. Thanks, that was my only question. So you don't think you need a vote or anything else on this? You're just, this is more informative and until we get to.
I don't need a vote, but I do want to keep the commission informed, especially on the vehicle additions and the estimate changes.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No.
Okay. That'll move us on to ratify the MassDOT grant award for AIP 82 for the state chair in the amount of $156,854.39. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? accepting grants, Ms. Stockman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Scarron.
Aye.
Mr. Marks. Aye. Chair votes aye, and moves us on to, similarly, grant award for AIP 85. For the, Ingrid project entitlement discretionary funding of the state chair in the amount of $1,914,000, $914,769.17. Is there such a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any further questions? Stop my.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Marks.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And back to you, Mr. Carver, for an update on, Mr. Smith's, planning board application.
We have that. So following up from the June meeting, we have a new lot layout for Mr. Smith, which Brian is bringing up on the screen. The proposed layout indicates the location of 17 storage containers and the dedicated impound area. I've exchanged emails with Mr. Smith, and I think there are 2 items that we're still working on that I think are open for discussion for the commission here. And those are the parking requirements. I believe that Mr. Smith is pursuing a parking waiver and looking for 4 spots on the lot. And I'm looking for additional information, and the narrative form is fine on the use of the buildings. Just a little more detail on, general storage and warehouse. I know that planning board, this was continued at the planning board. For next month, that last night for next month. And we will be looking to Mr. Smith for an airport attendant alteration application. At some point, but likely pending any direction or possible position.
Any further?
I'm concerned when you're starting fresh out there asking for parking waivers. I think we have other parking issues out there that we need to address, and the last thing we need is him parking off the street. I'd like nothing more than to park all my employees on the road out there, but I think it would look pretty unsightly and not really what we want to present, even though we are an industrial area. Unless that's going to become our policy that we allow.
No,
Which I don't think.
similarly, I would voice the, concern of needing to understand, as Scarborough mentioned, the uses of the structures. So that you could understand that parking demand. I like that the storage containers reduced from his last application, however, the concern I voiced at the last hearing is being sure that we have some kind of a understanding or check of balance that it's truly for storage purposes and it's not, whatever the number is right now, individual business operations coming and going on it. And I'm sure that's a little hard to condition, but that would come under, I think, the planning board special permit. So ideally, he can be aware of our concerns and then we could not be involved in that process. And he will be willing to address them. And I think that the other is, the area used for impounding, it was going to identify it as that. It was such a big part of the RFP, and the reason for putting this out, in my opinion, should be somehow conditioned for exclusive use of impound vehicles. But again, that's just my thoughts on it, right? It shouldn't then be that's your parking or shared. That's the impound area. That's what that use is for. And otherwise, again, said it last time, wishing the best. Hope the tenant can, profit off of the land that he's leasing, and then all could work out. But let's start off on the right foot for a long-term lease to make sure that both sides of the tenant and landlord are on the same page. Everyone, anything else? Yeah, so I think Mr. Smith, we can give him that feedback and hopefully he'll come back to, Mr. Carver prior to filing something for the next planning board meeting. Further, we'll move on to the manager's report.
Sure, for project updates, North Ramp hard stands We inspected that project with Mass DOT aeronautics staff on July 2nd. They were our main funding agents. Nothing further. They're in use and it's come off the list. For the airport master plan, we held a staff level meeting today to review the initial runway 624 alternatives today. Preston was in that meeting. I believe we're looking at a basic fault and failure analysis of some of the options. We did discuss this at the end of the previous TAC committee meeting. And I believe the outcome will be reported out in the next TAC committee meeting. For that discussion, is that correct?
We might have one additional meeting because we ended short today and I believe we still have a few comments to address. So there may be one before the TAC, then we can identify which alternatives will be presented to the TAC.
For the geometry project, the FAA review is completed and we're coordinating with them on some technical comments that related to aviation services and instrument landing system critical areas. And I think they'll be resolved soon. The other portion of this project is our disadvantaged business enterprise plan, and those updates are on them. For our non-AIP projects, and I even had an update on this morning. We will be performing emergency runway 624 centerline work. It will take place overnight from 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. We need to find a date. We're going to start the work on Thursday, but contractor has a staffing issue, so we're going to look for the same day next week or Wednesday next week. But we'll work in and out between the last air carrier operation to close the day. And the first air carrier operation in the morning. We've reached out to the town to let them know about this work. So it's not catching anyone by surprise. And when we have a new date, I'll let everyone know as well as the town.
Will it impact 1533 for the whole time or just for part of it?
1533 will remain open, but will be limited to those aircraft that can operate on 1533 during that closure, which 7 p.m. is not yet. For hangar development, so we have completed the appraisal of hangar 8. We're working to retain a surveyor now, and then we'll move to draft to negotiate a lease with Hagedorn Aviation. This has been on my list for a while. We haven't discussed it in 6 or 7 months, but from previous commission meetings, we had determined we wanted to enter into a direct negotiation with Mr. Hagedorn to renovate hangar 8 for an aviation purpose. He will outline this, he will fix up that hangar, use it for aircraft storage, and we will maintain part of the use of that for GSC storage. So we think it's gonna be compromised for most general aviation and meet our GSC storage uses. And then for fence relocation for the South Shore, we're looking to take on this work for the fall as a potential change order for the RDO contract, utilizing our existing capital authorization and a Mass DOT ASMP grant. For funding, we're also responding to a notice of funding opportunity through I believe it's an FAA resiliency program. That may be able to provide additional funds. For the RFP bid status update, we issued an RFP for 33 Bunker Road. We received responses. 4 proposals were evaluated by the committee, and the recommendation that will make to the airport commission with a lease in the future is to award to Act Mobile Mechanics. We had 4 good proposals, and this one was a hair ahead of the others. So this will be with Mr. Mr. Foulding currently has a mobile mechanic service and he's now looking to upgrade it on the base. We have an invitation for bids for the fuel farm inspection. They're available to the public and due on July. For our operations update, on June 29th, we worked with JetBlue to run an empty test operation of the Airbus A220. The goal is for the pilots to assess its operation on their pavements. In its hard stand and familiarize ground crew. It was a success. I have to tell you, the aircraft is incredibly quiet from landing on the runway, taxiing to the ramp. And even running with the APU on the ramp, the chief pilot, station manager. We had a conversation under the tail of the aircraft with the APU running, so. It's an impressive piece of equipment.
What's the footprint relative? To the 190, is it similar or?
It's. The wingspan is noticeably wider. It is also longer, but the wingspan is what jumps out. It's also, I think, 40,000 pounds heavier on that takeoff. Just going to recap our 4th of July week summary. It was busy. Everyone did great. I'm really proud of the entire team. So again, people tend to arrive to Nantucket throughout the week, and then they all return on Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, we set a record of 2,004 securely screened passengers and over 1,200 checked bags. We also sold over 25,000 gallons of Jet A. That, however, is not the record. Sunday, we had heavy fog that led to flight cancellations and a ground delay program. Airport staff, visitor services, and airlines and the boat companies, we all work together to help impacted passengers find boat tickets and lodging. I was there for the last flight, the last cancellation. Everyone left the airport with a place to stay or a place to go. So I really wanted to thank Chantal Blois, David Sharp, and Liz Holland for their help. Really in diverting what would have been 1,000 people in the shelter somewhere. Update on Jet A supply. We are in our peak season. We're taking delivery of 14 truckloads of Jet A per week. 2 to 3 trucks, 6 days a week is what that ends up being every day except Sunday. Sales are on pace with our 3-year average for this time of year, which is good news, but the bad news is sales are on pace with our average, and every July for the last 3 years, we've had to institute Jet A restrictions. So our goal is to avoid this by working with the steamship on extra reservations, take care of our own business, make sure the fuel farm stays operational, and make sure we have integrity through our complete supply chain from the terminal all the way to our farm. We received 2 extra reservations so far from the steamship. And I really think 2 to 3 more prior to July 24th will get us through this. So the goal is no sales restrictions. If we do find ourselves in that position again, we do stagger it. We pick a maximum uplift amount for transient general aviation, typically 300 to 400 gallons, and then we maintain on-demand ask for scheduled air carriers, tenants, and flights. Certification inspection, we have 1 item remaining. It's our runway 624 markings. We have a correction date of August 9th. August 9th isn't helping us, but we'll work to identify a date for night painting, possibly with the runway centerline work. And I wanted to inform the commission, I am intending to travel to the National Airports Conference. It's in Fort Lauderdale in late September this year. It is one of the conferences in my contracts. Again, if you have any concerns with that travel, please let me know. For statistics, May total operations are down 12%, and year to date they are down 10%. I'm not gonna wait. Southwest ramp operations for May were down 32%, so I believe it was weather impacted. But enplanements were up 10% in May, while operations were down again. That is the effect of larger air carriers operating in our market. Year to date, enplanements are down 3%. For Cape Air in May, Boston was down 14% on a reduction of 248 passengers. New Bedford was up 17%. Hyannis was up 202%. So 595 versus 197 passengers a year ago. That's the second month of growth of that magnitude, which is encouraging. And then the Vineyard was down 51%. JetBlue, Boston was up 54%, so that increase directly offsets the Cape Air decrease. So the market is still strong there. DCA was up 155%. It's a strong market. All I can say is that both sides of the aisle agree that Nantucket and settlers and funding. White Plains is up 99%, JFK was down 27%, and LaGuardia was down 15%. Again, those were all on JFK. United had 543 passengers in May. They did not operate in May of 2023, so we don't have a year-over-year comparison. For Delta, JFK was down 30%, LaGuardia was up 37%. For Jet A sales, as of June 30th, we are up 2.7% compared to our 3-year average. We're up 0.3% over the past 3-month 3-year average, and then down 3.4% over the previous month. Which again, 3-year average is what we use for forecasting our reservations, our sales revenue and things like that. In the FBO, along the same lines, we're down 2.8% against the fiscal year to date, up 0.1% over the last 3 months, and down 3.6% for the last June 3-year average. And that's all really within margin of error. That's one uplift by a large business jet. Terminal sales were up nearly 20% over the 3-year average, 3.5% in the last 3 months. Down 0.7. For low lead, we are down 11.2%. We're the 3-year average, up 8% in the last 3 months, and up 0.5% over the last. For freight, we are down 24% in May and down 8% on the year. FedEx, Cape Air Freight, and mail are down, while UPS was up. We had 12 noise calls in May. And then as a handout, we have the APU action log summary. Again, this is a new item. I initially reported on it last year. We're still tweaking the format. Airport operations logged 20 APU action entries, down 26 from last month. This is also going to be a lower percentage of our business jet operations. I have not been able to pull those numbers, but clearly traffic in June is higher than traffic in May. The ratio of complaints or fewer log entries, a percentage will drop. But for the initial warnings, 88% of the time, the pilot and command complied with the APU limitation or provided a valid reason for running. No second warnings were issued. One of these entries was regarding a Coast Guard flight. And again, we don't audit the Coast Guard, we just log it because it is useful for complaint response. We did discuss the number of APU action entries with airport operations, and they provided the comments. I'll get the comments there. And they informed me that the pilots have been respecting 15-minute APU usage on the ramp and using GPUs. And that's the reason they give the AP log entries. Again, it's our first year, 2nd month auditing this. We'll continue to.
Any questions or comments on the statistics or manager's report? Thank you, Scott. Then what's on the commissioner's comments?
No.
It's just one thing, I didn't, when the master plan, there's planning for that, right? Somebody that we can talk to about that or be involved in that. Just some observations I had being sitting outside watching all the JetBlue planes maneuver around one of the hangars and get moved off where their flight stand over being held temporarily. It just felt like that could be a better flow over there. Just didn't know if I could share some of those observations with them, or especially now, what made me think of it was you said the new plane's got even bigger wingspan. What's his name? Can't think of his name. Jeez. He's the hangar there is kind of in the way.
So that's a great observation. So Mr. Lasden, Preston, we have been discussing those hangars. And I don't want it to come as a shock to those occupants because I do not intend on taking hangar space away from them. But
Right.
I believe they should be removed and rebuilt.
Someone relocated. That was my feeling. Was just that one observation there. Just there's a lot going on, and they have, especially when they have to. I don't know if there's a way to like even like come down the fence row there more and like where FedEx and stuff is and have them stage somewhere else because if they could hard stand in. You know, I mean, if it makes sense for them to swing in and then do the hard stand and be able to get pushed back and leave them there without being moved. It's gonna save a lot of time and effort. It seemed like there could be a better way to fix it.
So what I would, if I
Yeah,
may,
please
what I would
go.
suggest is, master plan committee. We wouldn't want to form of commissioners, and we have to post as a public meeting, and these aren't necessarily freely exchanged, but I'd love to offer to you, Mr. Marks, and any other commissioner, one-on-one with Ms. Canham. To go over the master plan, those ideas, and make sure we're looking at your comments here.
Anyone else say?
No.
Thank you. Public comment items on the agenda.
I don't know.
Mr. Walsh, the floor is yours. You're welcome to join us.
I don't. Walsh.
You're welcome to come up to the table if you'd like, or.
I think you need to be at the table with the microphone as well, for the recording.
No, I just heard, on the paving, it's gonna be all complete. July 26th.
That's the plan.
So that's the end of paving on the southwest ramp
That's the anticipated end of production.
of any paving on the southwest ramp.
I have Mr. Laston. I don't know if there's any
Sure, we'll
follow
defer.
up on the roadway or Cape Cod curbing that would follow up to that.
Mr.
Talking about
Is that
airport.
something that you know, we typically don't go too back with public comment, but I
Yeah.
think something like this, Mr. Walsh, I would hopefully we could address that. Mr. Laston, is that something you could address? You might be muted or we can't hear you.
Still,
No, Richard,
So I think we'll have-
figure out.
Why don't we get back to you?
oh, no,
On
why
that.
don't I just finish? I'm
Yeah, finish. Yeah,
standing
please.
here.
Yeah.
You know, all right. If there's no more paving in the future, like for general aviation airplanes. No more paving on the southwest ramp for any more airplanes. Is that correct?
As part of this project, yes.
The
Yes.
southwest ramp project,
Right, we're gonna pay the bills and that's it.
okay. You did plan on doing paving down over the grass and for airplanes way down the runway.
May I address
Yeah,
that?
please,
Please
So
do.
the airport is, over the past 10 or 15 years, we published documents that are versions of projects as we see them. 10 or 15 years ago, we had planned on a much larger 5-phase ramp expansion. That probably has a stamp date on it of 2009, 2010, I'm guessing. That was replaced subsequently by new concept drawings the size that we have now. We go through iterative planning processes, we publish where we are at the time. But that is not our intent. I know some people have represented that very old, very out of date concept as some kind of ulterior motive or the evil airport plan to take over the remaining area of the grass, and that would not be great.
Okay. Well, that was planned, and then I was told that you had leftover materials because you didn't do, stone and all this other stuff.
I think that would be new information.
Say again?
I think that would be new information.
Oh, new information to you. Anyways, what is the chance of paving in other areas for general aviation airplanes? And never pave that grass down near where all these people live. For general aviation airplanes. Keep all general aviation airplanes out of that area. Anything that can make noise out of that area.
So I'd say our airport layout plan that shows 5-year longer roadmap for airport development is published, really available, and shows all airport projects that are reasonably anticipated or even concept. It's publicly available and get rather.
Okay, but now that you have you do not have a runway 1-2 anymore, it's taxiway. It's taxiway Charlie, I believe. What is the chance of paving along someplace along that taxiway for general aviation parking? If you put it all the way down the end, down towards 3-3, people could use 3-3 and taxi off, or use 1-5 taxi off onto that parking area. Use pavement off of taxiway Charlie for future general aviation parking. And that way, you'd be able to build a parallel taxiway from the end of 3-3 down to where you are proposing a high-speed turnoff for runway 3-3. So it wouldn't cross, it would be a land and hold short. And that parallel taxiway would be paid for by the FAA and the government. And that would open up Bunker Road for future pavement and general aviation, keep general aviation all the way all over there, and commercial aviation all the way over here.
Okay.
You know, and it's just
Yeah, thanks for the thoughts and comments. Mr. Lasden, our, resident engineer is taking all that in as well. So we appreciate the comments and thoughts. I mean, we're not gonna sit here and.
no, I'm just bringing.
The comments are in the
No,
thoughts,
I just
the thoughts
want-
by somebody on the airfield are certainly appreciated.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring
Yeah.
that up and I just, but
Thank you.
okay,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. Take care. Walsh. Are there any other public comments? Online? Okay. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for general law, chapter 30A, section 21A. To review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for review of possible release. Clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission. To discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation regarding Turo, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission. And finally, clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to pursuing legal claims against the manufacturer of PFAS and other potential sources of PFAS, where the chair has determined an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission. Not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Ms. Hoffman, how do you vote?
aye.
Roll call vote, I guess I'll say, but here, to under executive session, Sharon.
Aye.
Mr. Marks and Chair votes aye. Thank you all very much.